ECSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download.
Excuse me, Mr. DJ.
Hey, check this out. We got a great show coming your way.
From the ECSI Sports Studios, the #1 sports information program in America, the Breakfast Bankroll, with your host, the sports broker, Jeff Dawson.
Excuse me, Mr. DJ.
Hey, check this out. We got a great show coming your way.
From the ECSI Sports Studios, the #1 sports information program in America, the Breakfast Bankroll, with your host, the sports broker, Jeff Dawson.
Good morning, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and it's that time of the week. You survived Labor Day weekend. You survived week 0, week 1 of college football. Wow. A lot to talk about, a lot to break down. But what we are doing here today is we are debuting a new show, a new thought process that is here for the real sports investors. It is here the way we think games should be broken down. Numbers, more numbers. And myself and Scotty Webb have done a lot of talk in the off season. And we've come up with a thought process that every Monday, Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday at 9 a.m., we want you to join us. We're going to be talking about recaps, re-entries on Monday, what our eyes saw in college football and the NFL, some open-end numbers on Monday, of course, Monday Night Football as well, and in Tuesday, really start to dig in and start to invest in some of these plays as the week progresses, instead of waiting for kickoff where the numbers are too sharp and already been picked through. Like week 1 and week 0 in college football, those numbers have been out for 3 or 4 months. You can't find any value. You can't find any CLV. It's really hard to find. And this week in the NFL, everyone's so excited. Game on Thursday, game on Friday, games on Sunday, game on Monday. These numbers have been out for 3 or 4 months, guys. If you think you're going to destroy Vegas in week 1 with numbers that have been out for so long, good luck. You're better off to just pick and choose, get a little action, and get ready for week 2 when they only have 6 or 7 days to try to get you versus, I don't know, 150 days. So a lot to go through. Scotty has put together some amazing spreadsheets. He's going to walk us through them, and he's going to talk about this week in college football already, and we will divulge into the NFL, where again these numbers are tighter than a snare drum, so you're not going to beat them. But first and foremost, a shout out to our proud sponsors and partnerships. It's WagerWire. Head on over to Google Play, download the app. It is free. AtlantaSteaksAndSeafood.com. Steak, seafood, chops, appetizers, wine. You know the drill. Head on over to AtlantaSteaksAndSeafood.com. Tell them JD from ECSI sent you. So without further ado, the co-star of the show, Mr. Scotty Webb. Morning, champ.
Hey, what's going on, Jeffrey? We survived the weather this weekend. Rain kind of stopped. I went out and did some stuff yesterday, sprayed off the driveway, and now I'm all sunburned.
Well, I'll be heading down to Panama City Beach next Wednesday. Not this Wednesday, next Wednesday. I will be in your neck of the woods through Sunday. So let's just keep any hurricanes or any tropical storms out of the way. I will be a meteorologist. I expect you to be on speed dial. If you got a big one coming next week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I will guarantee you this. My ass will be on Cape Cod. I'll send Anthony Pepe and whoever else wants to go. I ain't getting stuck down there.
Well, it doesn't look like we have a whole lot going on right now. I mean, you always watch stuff, but most of the stuff that's coming from the coast of Africa is turning and becoming fish feeders, and there is one area they're watching that comes off the coast of Mexico down there, or South America anyway, and maybe it'll come up our way, but who knows? We'll see what happens over the next few days and time frames and what develops, and all of us in Florida become sort of meteorologists to some degree.
All right, week 0, week 1 college football are complete. Again, the public remembers what they saw last. I mean, the big games. Arch Manning will never make it in the NFL. He's already trying out for the CFL as the defending champs. Ohio State take a 1-0 lead there. They'll probably meet up again. Who knows there? LSU travels to Clemson. I'm a big Nussmeier fan. Again, wasn't the fireworks that we thought. Hats off to Brian Kelly and LSU. Big win for them. They always start slow, 1-0. Dabo, Cade Klubnik, potential Heisman, 0-1. And they got some, they can afford another hiccup, but 3 losses probably won't get Clemson in. I think the big game, the ones that people were just not ready for, was Florida State, 14-point underdogs at home, manhandling Coach DeBoer and the Alabama Crimson Tide. Let's just say the alum are getting a little impatient there. It didn't matter if they brought Bear Bryant back. You weren't going to replace Nick Saban. A 2-10 Florida State team last year, a team that you saw with a sense of urgency, a chip on their shoulder, and a veteran quarterback with Castellanos, who I saw all last year at BC. Hats off to Florida State. And then last night, the return of Bill Belichick to coach, and a team with 70, not 70 new players. A TCU team who was in the spotlight not too long ago against Colorado, coming off a national championship loss. 17, 20, 24-point favorites, where Colorado and Dion came onto the scene and beat them outright. So, again, a lot to take in there, Scott, but the people remember what they saw last. What did you see?
Well, I think there's a lot with week 1 that it's the best part is basically that we got a lot of teams that were good, played each other. So that helps us with data and information to rank these teams and kind of shake things out as we go along down the line, right? So I don't know how many pundits I heard tell me about how great the defensive line for Clemson was, for example, or how Notre Dame's defense was super and all that stuff. It doesn't always work out the way that people think it is, because, you start, I think one of the biggest fallacies between trying to figure out how good a team's going to be and so forth is what the expected growth level is. So it's like the Cade Klubnik kid and the differences and the stuff with Clemson. The expectation is that they're going to take another step and get better. Well, they don't always do that, and maybe they've maxed out to where they really are, and the truth becomes they're not going to be what you think they are, and it becomes then a hype machine, right? There's a lot of that happens. The other part of that is how do the coaches develop the talent, right? So the Texas-Ohio State game, right? you had the idea is that, you had Arch Manning, who has played a few games, started a couple times, has some experience. The Texas is probably the best defense in all the country. Then you go in there, and Ohio State starting a kid that's never played before. They got an offensive line that's kind of rebuilt. They got running backs you probably never heard of. Certainly they got wide receivers, and they got new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, all the stuff that makes it so that, the common sense plays to bet on Texas, right? So what happens? Well, what happens is they put a game plan together that doesn't expose the quarterback. So the quarterback wasn't allowed to have an open playbook. He only had a certain amount of things he could do, things he was good at. And then they found a way. Patricia was great, the defensive coordinator for Ohio State in that game. He had so much going on that it confused the quarterback for the other side with Manning. I thought that a lot of things happened where Ohio State's coaching and game planning put them in a position to win that game. And it also it's like when you play poker. When you play poker, you have a hand, and maybe your hand isn't capped. It's going to get better, or it could get better. I think that's the way Ohio State is. Ohio State is going to get better and better. They didn't even show what they can do. And certainly Texas will get better because they'll figure out what Arch Manning can do, and he's not going to play poorly every time he goes out there. So I think when you start to think about some of the stuff that happened, you have to look at it from a perspective of where are these teams really, A, and then B, how much of it were our teams put in a position to win? I thought LSU was a team that looked the real deal. They got a real quarterback. I think Clemson's going to be a team that's going to be hard to run on all year, and they were able to run the ball, but they were able to throw the ball. I think Clemson's going to have a problem in a sense that they didn't run the ball against LSU. And I don't know, that if they become a one-dimensional team and it's all going to be Cade Klubnik, looking at that particular game, QBR number is one of the worst in America. So he's going to have to be better. And I don't think he is taking that next step forward. I mean, it's one game, but the reality becomes is where do you go? How do you do this? Well, when you can sit here and look at it, but the reality becomes figure out who can win the offensive line game, who can win the defensive line game. And those teams are going to be able to do a lot. Look at last night, right? I mean, and maybe shame on me for not really figuring it out. I didn't know what Bill Belichick had. I knew he had a whole bunch of new players. I didn't know if he had any good players. Think about it from this perspective. Dion, when he took over, did the same thing, brought in a whole bunch of players. But he brought in a class of players that was well above what Bill Belichick has. And there's no question that the Shedeur Sanders and Hunter and all those guys that he brought in over there made a difference. Because when you look at what Bill Belichick has, those guys got mauled, like weren't even close. It was like a JV team going against a varsity team in high school. Yeah, it was not good. The quarterback's bad, and you can coach those kids all you want to, but if you don't have the right talent, you're never going to win. So I'm not sure where that puts that team. I know they play again this week against Charlotte or somebody, and they're 12-point favorites or something. But it's hard to figure out kind of where that program is going to be, and what they're going to do. And maybe they go to a quarterback change. Maybe they do a bunch of different other stuff to try to help. But if you don't have the kids, you don't have the kids. But again, I thought Miami was better than what I expected them to be. I thought their defense was phenomenal in that game. I thought Notre Dame would do what Ohio State did. I thought they would kind of limit their new quarterback, and I thought they would get their three running backs going. Well, they didn't run hardly at all. So I don't know what they were doing in terms of game planning and style. Maybe they couldn't. So I thought Miami was a lot better than what it turned out to be. And when you sit here and you listen to everybody talk about how great the ACC is going to be, and it's all going to be dominated by Clemson, they're going to win. Well, I don't even know if the Clemson's the best team anymore. When you sit there and you talk about it, Miami might be. Florida State played pretty good, but I don't know if that's because Florida State is better than Alabama, or if just Alabama is a team that wasn't ready to play that day and thought they were just going to go in there and be a prima donna and walk all over them. So I think there was a lot of information that we learned in week 1 that we can use as we kind of come down the line for week 2 and week 3 and week 4.
Well, speaking of that, our goal here again, people, is very simple. Our plan is Mondays to come in at 9 a.m. We're going to do a recap on the college and the NFL. We'll what we saw, what we were right, what we were wrong on, and then talk about some opening numbers that come in on Monday. Tuesday is where you get the pen and the pad and you sharpen it up. We'll have actually some leans, some moves on Tuesday morning. Wednesday we will be off, me and Scotty. Thursday we'll be back for the NFL game, of course, on Thursday, and talk about the weekends. Maybe have some more leans, some more moves, maybe some quarterback moves, some injuries, ins and outs. Friday will be the cup of tea where we put pen to pad. Anything that we haven't released or talked about, we'll have a better picture on Friday. So that is the goal. And with that, I'm going to pull up what Scotty has put together, which is an amazing piece of work. I'm going to turn it over to him right now so he can tell us what he has put together. And this will be our Bible moving forward for both the college and the NFL.
Well, this is just a way to organize my thoughts, to be honest. And obviously, it's in a structure that shows this is the college one, and there's an NFL one. But the idea basically here is to be able to look at things in a stylistic manner that helps me figure out how to look at these games. So the first game of the week is on Friday this week. There is no Thursday football. Normally there's Thursday college football. This week, Thursday, is the opening day of the NFL, so it's a standalone game. So Friday, the first game is James Madison at Louisville. So the way the spreadsheet kind of goes out is on that Sunday or Monday, I get a number and I put it in there. That's the first thing on the left side. And then I bet at Profit X mostly. So Profit X has got a number in there, and that's an updated number that I try to get before the show or every day. And then I get Bill Conley's XPR numbers, and I put those in there. I don't have those yet for him this week. They should be out today. And now he has his ratings out, but I don't have his game score predictions and things. So the next one, I get Kenny White's numbers, and I put his numbers in there. So the one number sitting there is he at the beginning of the season, he puts out a preseason number that is for every single game all throughout the year. So I have that one in there. So it's called the preseason number. And then he brings out his weekly one, which I got last night at 1 o'clock in the morning. It's in there. And then the opening number, right, is in there. So in this particular case, for example, the opening number in this game is Louisville minus 15, total 57.5. Profit X right now today is minus 14, 57.5. So a little bit of money is coming in there on James Madison taking the 15 points. Kenny White's number is 18.5 for Louisville, and his predicted score is 41-23. So that brings up two things, and I got a little box there. So it says value to vet. Well, what that means is there's value in a number. Now we have to figure out, do we want to bet that value or not? So we look at it from a perspective of, well, Kenny's number says 18.5. It's 41-23. That's 18 points. The number is 14. So we're getting value to bet on Louisville in this case because we only have to pay minus 14, and there's predicted to win by 18. So then we want to look at it from a different level. So I looked at QBR, right? QBR is the kind of farthest column over there. QBR for Louisville, they ranked 10th. That's pretty good out of 130 schools. That's top 10 is great. Well, the quarterback for James Madison ranks 6th. So in this case, you got two really good quarterbacks from last week's games, and then we'll just have to see how they match up. So that's my job now, is to go and say, hey, I found a value spot. Is it real value or not? And then you go and look at it, because maybe, when you look at this and you start looking at numbers and how people bet, maybe you can find a number at 13.5. If the number goes to 13.5, that's key value at 13.5 from 14 when the line opened at 15, and you think the number should be 18.5. So that's kind of how this thing plays out and how it works.
Well, again, you got the card all set up here Friday and Saturday. Again, it's only Tuesday. You got all your numbers plugged and played. Is there, you would like to break down any games, anything that you've seen initially here in college to get everyone prepared for Thursday? Or is this something that you want to just transition right away into the NFL and this week's card?
Well, I think it'll be more fun to talk about college football, because the reality is the NFL, when we talk NFL, we're going to go, well, that number's picked over, that number's picked over, that number's picked over. It's kind of like what we did. Look, I was, no shame in saying, like, if you click that button, Jeff, that says week 1 there, and then I'll show you one thing. See all the yellow highlights there? So the yellow highlights, those are the games I was thinking about betting. And then if there's a thing that says grade, well, those are the bets I made, and it'll tell you I won this game, I lost this game. Well, I went 4-4 on college football, and then I had notes and different things are off to the right there about the different places I got information from. So the reality became I was 4-4 even doing all of these things, but at the same time, those were really picked over numbers. And I will say this. I know there are, I think, 4 syndicate groups, maybe 3. I know Brad Powers leads up one of them. I know that Raz is one of them. I know that Joey Tunes is one of them. And I think there's another one. And I don't know if that's a group that involves Blue Horseshoe, whatever, Steve Fezzik, or if it's a group that involves Crackman, or if it involves somebody else. But when those guys make bets, the numbers move, and they're out here trying to pick off these numbers. And the big thing that we have to figure out in a lot of this stuff is when a line moves, why did it move? Was it because a syndicate made the number move? Or was it an injury or weather related or something along that line? Was it some kind of news, right? So, for example, a couple of notes that I wrote down was, the Oklahoma State quarterback broke his foot. Well, if you look at that number, it's like 33 or something like that for Oregon against Oklahoma State today. So if you kind of dive into it, you go, well, they're going to have a backup quarterback. They're going to do different things. I wrote down at Tennessee, not that they really are playing anybody this week, but Tennessee in the future, keep this in mind, they have 2 defensive backs that are injured. Well, those 2 defensive backs are both their starting cornerbacks. So if you're a college football team that loses your best cover corners and you're going to play a team that can pass in the SEC and they're going to play a good team, well, you might run into some trouble there. And when the line comes out, I'm sure it's going to reflect that at this point because the information is very public. But maybe you get an edge because of that. You got to keep up with stuff like that. The NFL, for example, on Friday, they come out and tell you who's going to play in the game. Well, you need to know who's going to play in the game, because if there's offensive linemen that aren't going to play, or there's stuff like that, that's a big detriment. So anyway, those are where I have the note sections and different things for what I'm trying to do here with trying to keep up with it, because the way this should flow and the way this should work is it should be a an ever evolving portfolio of different things that based on different ways you get information. And yes, numbers are extremely important. The one thing I would advise anybody, never bet a bad number. If you're looking for 13 and a half and it never gets to 13 and a half, guys, there's 130 college football teams. There's 32 NFL football teams. You don't have to make that bet. Don't bet a number you don't want to bet, and don't bet a bad number. If it's 7 and you want 6.5 or 6, then by God, get 6 or 6.5. I'm not telling you to buy the number down. I'm telling you to get that number. If it never comes, then pass the bet. There's lots of times that's going to happen or should happen. You should have an idea of, like, for example, Jeff, one of the games I'm looking at, like, for example, Liberty plays Jacksonville State this week, and it's a noontime start on Saturday. The opening line was -6 for Liberty, and then Kenny White says Liberty should only be -2 in that game. Well, now that tells me, and then Prophet X has it -6.5 for Liberty. So that tells me Jacksonville State, if I can get them +7. That's a hell of a spot, right? Because I can get him at +7. Kenny says it should only be -2. His preseason number was -4. I'm getting a full key number above where it needs to be, and that's value. And then when I looked at kind of coming out the quarterbacks, Liberty was 93 on QBR last week. That's not very good. Jacksonville State was 94. Right there with each other. So there's not really a whole lot of value that says, hey, one quarterback is dominantly better than the other one. So that's the kind of stuff. And then you sit there and go, let me look for this number. Let me look for this number. And then when it pops, you take it and you bet it, because it's not going to be available forever. So you take it, you bet it at the +7. That's kind of how this works. And then as you do it, one of the things that I'm going to end up doing is, I listen to some of the stuff that happens. Brad Powers, for example, this week, I got him listed specifically because he gives out a lot of stuff. And, he goes around and says he's a college expert on stuff. And I'll be honest, he does way more college football work on knowing the teams than I do. So I do listen. And for example, he thinks Baylor +3.5 is a good bet. Well, all of his bets last week, of all of his best bets last week, he gave out 5. He was 0-5. So is he an expert? Well, I think he's an expert at knowing the teams. He might not be an expert at betting. And he's betting lines that, go back to May of last year. He's betting all kinds of different numbers and stuff. I don't know if you're going to find 3.5. SMU right now is -3. It opened -4. Kenny White's number is 5.5, and his preseason number was -6. So what that tells me is SMU in this particular case is maybe undervalued. Everybody's going, well, Baylor's not going to lose 2 in a row. Baylor got beat by Auburn. But, I think people forget how good Auburn really is supposed to be. Auburn has one of the best wide receiver groups in the whole country. And if you watched them play, they had a pretty good offensive line and they played pretty great defense. So, maybe Auburn's turned a little bit of a corner, and, Baylor's got to try to figure it out some. They like their quarterback. Well, their quarterback for Baylor was 51 QBR rated last week. It's top 3rd out of 130. It's not too bad. So, I kind of look at it and go, well, I don't know a whole bunch yet about SMU. So in terms of vet to value, I'm looking at SMU at -3 when Kenny says it should be higher than that. Maybe I can get all these people wanting to bet Baylor, and they bet Baylor and they get it down to 2.5. If they get it down to 2.5, look, -2.5 when it should be, say, -4 or -5 or -6 based on what you're looking at. That's great value, and that's where you find your bets. So he was also on Iowa this week. Brad Powers. And I don't want to sit here and tell you about all Brad Powers stuff, but it's important to understand where some of these guys go, and they move the number. So he was on Iowa at plus 3.5. So now the number's -3. So if you were going to bet Iowa, you would only get them at 3. Well, Kenny's numbers come out, and he thinks Iowa State should be favored by 6.5. His score is 28-21, Iowa State. And then when you look at the value of the quarterbacks, the quarterback backed for Iowa State, he's QBR rated 20th, and the kid that plays Gronkowski plays for Iowa, he was 110. Look, I get it. These are one game, and for Iowa State it's 2 games, but for Iowa it's 1 game. But it does matter. And when you look at the quarterback play, you want to bet on the better quarterback. And I'm not saying just go look at this and go bet the quarterback only. There's got to be more things involved. But what if you can get Iowa State, because Brad Powers gave out Iowa at plus 3.5. Now people come in and jump on them and get them to 3, and then maybe they get betting on them and they get them down to 2.5. What if you could get Iowa State minus 2.5? That's great value, and that's where you have to sit there and go, that's what I'm looking for. So when you look at this and you kind of encapsulate it, it's a strategy and plan to work with, to sit there and go, if that number pops, I'm betting it. Because ultimately, what we're really trying to do, and you know this as well as I do, we're trying to get key number value betting. So key number is 3. I can get under 3, great. I can get under 7, great. I can get over 7 if I'm betting a dog, great. All of those things add up. And then when your portfolio comes out, you should have a lot of good spots to bet. So I was looking at that, and here's a perfect example of why I want to look at Brad Powers kind of stuff. Cincinnati comes out against Bowling Green this week, and I think Circa opened them at a crazy number. It was like -10 or whatever. And the number opens everywhere else at -18. Brad Powers gives Cincinnati out. That game goes, Jeff, it's 3:30, so it's going to be line 37-38. So when that game came out, Brad Powers gives it out. The number's already up to -21. The number was Cincinnati -21. Kenny White has it -19. His preseason number was 17.5. So what everybody's looking at is Bowling Green played terrible last week. Cincinnati played well against Nebraska and lost, but they played well. The quarterback for Nebraska, or for Cincinnati, was QBR rated 57. The quarterback for Bowling Green, there's 130 schools, he was graded 126. So they're going to be a bad football team. But again, if you can get on a number, it's great. But here's a spot where you don't want to be betting on Cincinnati anymore. If you were going to bet Cincinnati at -17, -18, or whatever, okay, fine, if that's what you think is right. You certainly don't want to bet them now at 21, and you're going to. But if you don't have the availability to see where the number moved, then you don't have the idea of where was the value at, and how did the value move to take that away. So that's what I think is the most important thing about using this kind of flow worksheet, if you want to call it that, Jeff. So as we go forward, I think that's kind of where we're going to go and where my eyes are. So one of the bets, I think that, so there's a couple of things. So I think you're going to see stuff like 2 games in particular this week. Kansas is a very popular team. That people like Kansas. This is line 53-54. This is a very popular team. Like a lot of people like Kansas. They like the quarterback, who's I think in his 6th year this year. He's back. They played really well. I bet on them in week 0. They won. Well, guess who they play this week? They play Missouri. I don't think people know a lot about Missouri, But Missouri's a good SEC team. They're not a bad SEC team. They're a good SEC team. And Kenny White's got the number at 9.5. He's got the score 35-27. This game opened at 6.5. The game got bet down to 6 already. Look, I think this is a mismatch in terms of talent and people. I think this is where 6 is a good number. If you want to bet it right now, you can. If you can get maybe people get hyped up and they really want to bet on Kansas and it gets to 5.5. That's even a greater number. So that's where you have to sit there in your head and kind of look at it and go, how do I relate this? How does this kind of work? Do I wait? Do I wait? Do I wait? It doesn't hurt you to wait. It really doesn't. 5.5 and 6, it's not the same, because you win. If you bet them at minus 5.5 and you land on 6, you win. And if it's 6, you push. So it's not the same, but it doesn't really cost you a whole lot if you wait to see if you can get to 5.5. And that's where, you're really good at bet splits and bet odds and how much money comes in on teams, and the reality becomes is I look at that too. I'm just not as good at trying to figure out how much more money's coming. Is more money going to come on Kansas? My thought is, I think people are going to bet Kansas come closer to Saturday. I'm willing to wait, and maybe this number gets to 5.5, and if it gets to 5.5, I want to bet Missouri like that. So that's kind of what I'm looking at here. I'm hopefully that makes sense and helps.
Well, the funny is, I think the public went 0-5 last week as well. Texas, Alabama, Notre Dame, and there were 2 other public darlings. 0-5 for the public. So again, now will there be a flip? Because the public can't lose every week. But again, the 5 marquee top games, public went 0-5 there. We've talked about this. I'm going to switch over to the NFL. And guys, I want to make this clear here. Let me switch over here. Give me a second. Here we go. Remove. Give me 1 second, guys. Stop sharing. All right. And now we add, present, share. Scotty has done the same for the NFL as well. And not poo-pooing the NFL here. That's week 2. We go to week 1. The problem, again, is very simply is this, guys. You got through week 0 and week 1 of college football. Those numbers have been up since May, June, July, August. They've been picked through like that 20-pound carcass you dropped off at the landfill on Sunday, and then you went back on Saturday to bet college football, and there's nothing there but bones because it's been picked through. The NFL, which starts Thursday night, Dallas at Philly, Friday, Kansas City Chargers in Brazil, and then, of course, Sunday and Monday. My point is, these numbers have been picked through. They've been picked through. We talk about value, CLV, blah, 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 blah. My point is, you can start to find value week 2 and beyond. You're giving the books 3 months. I'll use 3 months as an example for week 0 and week 1 in college football. Now we're on a level playing field because now they have 6 and 7 days for week 2 and beyond. In the NFL, you got to give them this week. You got to give the books this week. I know you want to bet on Thursday. I know you want to bet on Sunday. I know you want to bet on Monday. I forgot Friday. Let the public and the degens sit and suffer, because week 2, now we're on an even playing field. So again, we got all the numbers. We've done all the work. Scotty's been doing all the work. We can go through your sheets here for the NFL, talk about some numbers, some check marks. But the fact of the matter is, these numbers have been out for so long, you're really not going to extract much value here, Scotty.
Well, that's the problem with college football, and when we had week 0 and stuff, and it's when people have access to bet these games in May, in June, they bet them. And, the way this works, and you might be able to explain this to people better than I do. The way I explain it to people is, look, you have a line that opens late Sunday night. That line opens to only a handful of people. Those handful of people, they don't have access to bet. They can't shoot their whole bankroll. They have access to bet it, which what that does, and those certain people are expert gamblers, right? So those expert gamblers then bet these lines at smaller amounts, but they get the greatest lines available to them. But that helps shade the market. So then when it comes to the public on Monday, say, that opens up, and then the Monday the markets are alive, but the limits on Monday and Tuesday aren't the same as they're going to be on Saturday. So on Monday people start betting, and then they start betting on Tuesday. Well, say they can only bet $5,000 a game. Okay, well that changes the market, but that protects the sports book's interest, right? So then the sports book adjusts the numbers based on how people are betting, and then Thursday comes around. Well, what happens on Thursday? Well, they start to open the book up numbers. They allow you to bet $20,000 or $25,000 or whatever, and then that starts to change it. And then on Saturday, they feel pretty good about where the numbers are, and they allow you to play whatever you want to play. You want to play $100,000 if you're a friend of the book? Okay, great. Play $100,000. We'll take your money, and we'll take your bet. And usually that's what you see. Like online, when you guys see these guys say, well, I remember it was just happened on this weekend. You remember what happened? Circuit came out and said, well, we had to change the number. We just took a $500,000 bet on Texas. They're not stupid. They took $500,000 because their thought was that Ohio State was going to cover the number, right? They can sit there and do that, and you see it over and over and over and over online. Just pay attention. Like these great big bets, they don't win online, and there's a reason why you see them publicize that. Oh, we just took this, we just took this, we just took this. Okay, well, they want you to keep doing it. They want you to keep betting on that side because, sports books have interests in what the number is because they have to protect their liability, and they want to win their side. So part of our job as gamblers is to understand, what does the sports book want to win? And if we know what side the sports book wants to win, we want to bet with that. Then there's no question. You want to bet with the side that the sports book wants to win. So you got to figure that out if you can. And it's very difficult to figure out once you've had betting for 5 months on a game or 3 months on a game. So interestingly enough, I did make a note. I got one bet from Adam Chernoff. I put it in there. Adam Chernoff likes the Cleveland-Cincinnati game over 46.5. Well, it's not 46.5 anymore. It's 47.5, 48. So, there's no value now when you see stuff like this. When people give you a play and the number's not the same, just throw it in the garbage. It doesn't matter. It's gone. You can't have value. What you can do is kind of watch the number, and if it gets to a certain point where it hits another key number, then you bet the other side, right? Because that happens a lot too. People give out a play like that Cincinnati game we talked about with Navy or Cincinnati, and I don't remember who they're playing, but Cincinnati and Bowling Green, that's who it is, and it's up to 21. Well, what if it gets up to 24? What if it goes that far? Well, the line opened at Circuit was 10, and it was 18 at everywhere else. So if it's 18 and it went all the way up to 24, well, maybe the sports books aren't stupid, guys. They know what they're doing when they open a number. And if you think the number's off by a touchdown, I'm just going to tell you, you're wrong. It may be that the score comes out a different way, but the line shouldn't be that way. It should never be off by that much. Now, if it's off by, a couple points here and there, that's just, maybe you're sharper, maybe you're not sharper. We'll see. But anyway, my point being is looking at the NFL, there's one thing that's going through my head about this Dallas-Philadelphia game. It's in Philadelphia. The number Profit X was -8. Um, the Kenny White's numbers are 11 points to Philadelphia. So I think there's what I've kind of learned about Kenny's numbers and different things is he's not afraid to put the big favorites out there or big numbers for teams and how they win, and I think that's good. When you're, I guess one thing I should say is if you're going to follow somebody's power rating numbers, the best thing I can tell you is you want them to be different. You don't want them to be the same number over and over and over and over and over. Like Steve Fezzik, I used to like his numbers, and I still like his numbers. I think he makes good numbers, but they're almost always within a half point of the number. They're almost always within a half point of what the line is. Well, I don't want somebody who's going to give me the same static line as what the book does. There's no value in me studying that line. There is some value in Kenny White going, I think the number should be 11.5 Philadelphia, and I've got a score of 33-21 Philadelphia. Well, then that helps me go and say, well, there might be value on the Philadelphia side. Let me look into that and then start vetting that value. And what I mean by vetting is where does that value come from? Is it from their defense, their coaching, special teams? What is it? So then you kind of deep dive into that. And I was talking to Jeff earlier before the show started, and one of the things I'm trying to figure out, and maybe you guys can leave comments or do whatever. I don't know how many we got watching this. I can't see, but the reality is I'm trying to get a good gauge on these quarterbacks that didn't play in preseason. I read an article, and one of the articles it talked about that, and it wasn't necessarily an ATS article, against the spread wins losses. It was a performance-related article that basically talked about the guys who don't play in preseason, the quarterbacks that don't play, typically have subpar to below average starts in their first game. That doesn't mean they lost the game because, their team might have good defense or they might have other things, like Philadelphia, for example, has got a great defense. So that doesn't mean they lose the game or doesn't mean that they lose ATS. But it does indicate that maybe their scoring is not going to be as good as what they normally would be in the middle of the season. So if anybody has any kind of thoughts or suggestions or things on that, I would love to hear what your thoughts are. My thoughts were is like in this particular matchup, Dallas plays Philadelphia. Well, both quarterbacks didn't play, so I'm not sure how there's value associated to one or the other than some of these teams need a lot of sequencing and they need a lot of game time rhythm to get it going, and kind of go from there. So, but I'm not. And Jeff, I know there's a lot of people listening that are super big trend people, and they want to go, well, how is the Super Bowl winner done in the next game, and how is and all that stuff. Look, all I'm going to tell you is every single game is a unique experience, and it's a unique line, and it's a unique matchup. It's not where you can sit there and go and blanket it and go, well, the Super Bowl champion the year after, they're 10-2 against the spread, or they're whatever they are. And then bet it because of that. You can't do that. And the reason you can't do that is because every Super Bowl champion the year after didn't play this Dallas Cowboys team with this new head coach, with this quarterback that was hurt half the year last season, with this team that just traded away their best defensive player, right? They didn't play that team. They played whatever team they played. And the truth is every single one is different. It's unique. Now, can you find a trend or a system that, fits into certain criteria? Maybe. I'm not saying every single trend or every single system isn't worth looking at, but I'm just going to tell you, if you're a trend better, you're not going to like me a whole lot because I'm not going to go into a lot of that. I'm not going to tell you a lot of those things. We're going to go as this goes. We're going to go into matchups. We're going to talk EPA numbers. We're going to talk yards per play. We're going to talk defense matchups, how all that stuff kind of works out. We're going to talk modeling a little bit and how modeling creates, points and what you can kind of look for in terms of totals and things. That stuff's coming, but we don't have the data for that yet. I don't have the data to do that yet for the college football either. So this is where we start, right? This should be where you start all the time. Here's the numbers. Here's where they're moving. Here's where people are betting. And then there's where perceived value is. And then go vet your perceived value and make your bets, right? So for example, Jeff, when you look at lines 21 and 22, the opening number in the middle of May for this game, this is Las Vegas, New England. New England was -7 when it first opened. It's not -7 anymore, but that's because everything changed, right? People started betting it. It's the Profit X has it down to -2.5 now. So do you have value then on New England? Well, Kenny White says the score should be 20-20. He doesn't have a final score winner. He thinks it's going to be a really close game. So what I'm trying to suggest is that these numbers are not, I guess the best way to call them, they're stale. They've been out there forever. They're not fresh. They're not ripe. You can't go pick through them and go and say, well, this is a good spot. That's a bad spot. This is a good spot. You're going to have to kind of figure out where the bets are going and decide whether you want to be with the public or whether you're going to want to be with the sports book. And then you got to figure out, what does the sports book really want? What's that number mean? Why is that number X when it could be something else, and other people in the other market have it at certain things? And, what's a good bet? So anyway, we'll have more, or I'll have more, probably Thursday and Friday on the NFL.
Let me just get out of this here, guys. Again, guys, the hardest part and what we're really trying to do here, guys, very simply is we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. Okay? Everyone is a creature of habit. Trends for some people are their friends. I talk about water cooler games. You're sitting at work, you're sitting in your cubicle, and there's a crawler that comes across that says the New England Patriots are 9-1 at home in their opener when a team has to travel more than 1,000 miles. And I say to myself, well, where was this the first 10 times? So everyone runs to the window and bets the Patriots because they saw the crawler. It's a water cooler game. And next thing you know, the Raiders not only come in and cover, they went outright. It happens in all the sports. We call them carrots. And for me, I'm a numbers guy. I know how to read the market. We've done it now for 10 years very, very well publicly. Scotty's a numbers guy. EPA, he's got more vowels and when it comes to baseball and abbreviations than the alphabet soup man. My point is, what we're really trying to do here this year is try to refocus you guys. Try to make you understand the numbers. Not the logo on the front, not the names on the back, okay? And that's what this is all about. Because of social media, because of the trends of the world and everyone else that you guys follow, the in-game betting. I see so many people now, Scotty, it's comical. I'm not going to call these people out. They can't pick a winner pre-flop, but now they're experts in-game live betting. It's almost like you bet this pre-flop and then within the first quarter they're diving in. Oh, I was on the wrong side, let me get on the right side. And I call that quicksand because by the end of the year you're not only going to lose your pre-flop bets, you're going to be 50-50 at tops in-game, and you're still going to now be minus X plus Y now. So again, we're trying to do this 4 days a week, Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. It's almost going to be like a crescendo where we're going to start on the Monday recap here. What did our eyes see? Where were we right? Where were we wrong? And give you some of those opening numbers. Scotty was explaining, for instance, what Circa does. When we're getting ready Sunday for opening kickoff at 1, Jeffrey Benson, Derek Stevens are releasing their college football for the next week to their sharp players. I think if I remember correctly, they have a 2-dime limit, and instead of they were sending them out in blocks, I think what they're doing now is sending them out game by game. You get in, you get out, you get back. You get in, you get out, you get back. And I think it's $2,000 limits. What they're doing is setting the market. You talked about the Cincinnati game where they opened it at 10 and everyone else had it at 18. Usually 9 times out of 10, they're on the correct side. But so probably what happened is that their 30 sharps, 29 of them hit Cincinnati at 10, 12, 14, and now you get to 18. So the market is set. So again, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, guys, here, but what we're really trying to do is show you under the hood, the numbers, the 8-cylinder, the 8 horsepower, whatever, what really goes on behind the scenes. Circa took the $550,000 bet on Texas +1. They flip it to Texas -1. Why did they do it? Well, because they knew they'd get $500,000 on Ohio State by the kickoff on the other side. So it really wasn't as big as a risk as a social media like, wow, this guy just dropped $550,000 on Texas.
Yeah, I mean, you see it everywhere all the time. Like it's always football. It's always football. You don't see, well, I shouldn't say, maybe you see a World Series bet or something that comes across that way, but you don't see that very often. You know, Mattress Mac maybe did something with the Astros or something, but the reality is you don't really see any other sport provide those kind of bets at that level. And on a weekly basis that you know, college football or NFL does. I would just tell you that if you are a winning bettor and you're graded as a winning bettor at a sports book, you don't have that kind of limit that you can bet. You can't go bet 500,000. You might be able to bet, I don't know, whatever the standard number is. You know, you might be able to get down your whatever that sports book offers. That's what you're going to be able to bet. But if you're a winning bettor, they won't let you do that. If you're a casual bettor or you're a friend that of the sports book that they know and they have graded you as basically, hey, this guy's a whale kind of bettor and he's got the money and he's good for it, they're going to take whatever they want because they know that their risk is very low, very limited. So when they start bombing out throughout the you know, your David Purdums of the world that go out there and say, hey, I just saw this bet and blah, 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 and here's the ticket and let me show it to you and, you know, and all that stuff. Look, those things don't win. And they're out there to show something, and there's a reason behind it because there's a lot of other things. Just be careful, you know, what you listen to and who you listen to. And I don't mean that in a sense that I'm the smartest guy in the world or you're the smartest guy in the world. But there's a lot of people out there that are going to tell you bullshit, and you know, stay away from that. Stay away from the stuff about the crazy things that they want you to start to thinking about and looking at, and you know, and what they bet on and how they bet, and you know, I don't want to sit here and talk negatively towards any company or anything, but there's a lot of stuff that is just not good information. What I've learned over the course of time is I need you know, I do a lot of baseball work. So when it comes to football, I'm behind. So instead of me creating my own numbers in football, I need to find somebody that I can trust. Well, Kenny White is a former bookmaker. I don't necessarily agree with what he does in baseball, but I've used him now for 2 or 3 years. In football, I kind of like his football numbers. You said you used him in basketball. You like his basketball numbers. So I'm good with him. So those numbers make sense. Say, okay, these are what they should be, or theoretically what they could be, and I want them to be a little bit different, so I can look to the value sides of different things. But if you got people out there telling you, hey, this is a lock, this is going to be something that is a guaranteed winner, you know, mortgage your house on this stuff. Look, these are people that are all hype. They're all just trying to get clicks. They're all just trying to do different things. And, you know, that's what this business has become. One of the things I don't like about this business is it's become, who can advertise the most, who can put a pretty face on the screen, who can do different things, but they don't talk good information. They don't talk good bets. They don't talk about what makes a good bet. And then people on the other side of it, they want you to give them free winners. Okay, well, look, that's not how this game works. There's a lot of work that goes into making a bet. There's a lot of work that goes into finding the value to bet. And as you watched through what we just created or what I created and showed on the screen, you might have a portfolio of, like I was 4-4. You might have a portfolio of 8 bets. Well, you might have a portfolio of 12 if they all fit this categories, or you might have 2, whatever that portfolio looks like. The reality then becomes is I can't tell you that one's super better than another one, because the reality becomes is I think that they're all good or they're all bad. If they're not good, I won't bet them in the first place. So how do you grade those? How do you grade? I see these guys all the time. Well, that's a 5-star play. That's a 3-star play. That's a 2-star play, right? You either bet it because you have value or you don't bet it because you don't have value. I mean, that's just the way it works. So I guess what I'm just trying to say is we're going to help you as best we can. Cut the fluff kind of stuff out of it. I wish I was sexier. I wish I had. I guess I wish we had thousands and thousands and thousands of people that were watching us so that we could get the information out to bigger people. But it is what it is. Let's grow this. I need. I used to do a baseball show for Jeff, and it was. I don't remember if it's last year, year 4, but we had a pretty good following. We had a couple hundred every night, and what we're trying to do here is, I would tell them, look, follow us on Twitter. That helps us. The biggest thing you can do to help this show, to help us, and I know this sounds stupid, and I know this is whatever, but there's so many people that watch. And then they go away, and then they come back, and they go away, and they come back every week. Look, subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost you anything. Follow us, like us, because the algorithm then starts to pick up on that stuff. When the algorithm picks up on that stuff, we get to see more things, right? We get more stuff. We get to be able to talk to people that go and say, well, hey, listen, your show's getting 1,000 views. That's pretty good. Now you're getting 2,000 views. Now you're getting 3,000 views. That's even better. But that doesn't come because we sit here and be able to go, well, let's put this out on everywhere, because that doesn't matter. What matters is your engagement and support to us. Like, we were getting some questions. We haven't got any questions today. But we'll get some as we go. And that's the goal. The goal is interaction, ask questions, grow this show, grow with what it is we're trying to do, and help us, right? We're going to help you and try to give you all the information that we have. And look, I'm gray-haired and Jeff's bald. So we've been around a long time. Help us get to where we need to go. We're going to help you get to where you need to go, and everything will work out. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Show number 1 in the books. Myself and Scotty will be back here Thursday and Friday, 9 a.m. Set your notifications. We're going to be talking Thursday night, opening kickoff, Dallas and Philly, of course. Any line movements that have happened in the NFL, any injuries, quarterbacks, yada, yada. And, of course, the same in college. And then we'll be back Friday at 9 a.m. to do the same thing. So, again, Monday, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. So get your questions ready there as well. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., Andrew McGinnis will be here talking some CFL, his Blue Jays, and what's going on in the NHL. Can't thank you guys enough. Hope everyone had a great Labor Day weekend. Hope you got the kids off to school. Stay tuned, stay safe, and see you soon.